Om Namo Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistike. So continuing with the discussion on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, Chapter 7, Lord Chaitanya in 5 features, text 49 onwards. So yesterday we were discussing how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Kashi and he stayed at the house of Chandrasekhar, had Prashadam at Tapan Mishra's house, and met Prakashanam Saraswati and transformed their hearts. इति मध्य चंद्रशेखर मिश्र तपन दुखी हया प्रभु पाए कैला निवेदन. While Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was instructing Sanatana Goswami, both Chandrasekhar and Tapan Mishra became very unhappy. Therefore, they submitted an appeal unto the lotus feet of the Lord. So this pastime will be described in detail later on. So somehow Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is just touching here. Katek Shuniva Prabhu Tomara Nindan Napari Sahite Ve Chadiva Jivan. How long can we tolerate the blasphemy by your critics against your conduct? We should give up our lives rather than hear such blasphemy. So critics were blaspheming or commenting on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dancing and chanting in Sankirtan instead of sitting down and studying Vedanta. So one of the most important instructions by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regarding regular Vaishnava behavior is that a Vaishnava should be tolerant like a tree and submissive like grass. Trinadapi Shunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Manina Manadena Kirtanya Sadahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Nevertheless, the author of these instructions, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, did not tolerate the misbehavior of Jagai and Madhai. When they harmed Lord Nityananda Prabhu, he immediately became angry and wanted to kill them. And it was only by the mercy of Lord Nityananda Prabhu that they were saved. So one should be very meek and humble in his personal transactions. And if insulted, a Vaishnava should be tolerant and not angry. But if there is blasphemy against one's guru or another Vaishnava, one should be as angry as fire. This was exhibited by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One should not tolerate blasphemy against a Vaishnava, but should immediately take one of these 3 actions. So what are the 3 actions? If someone blasphemes a Vaishnava, one should stop him with arguments and higher reason. So that should be the first course of action. But if one is not expert enough to do this, he should give up his life on the spot, because it's very dangerous to hear a blasphemy of a Vaishnava. And if he cannot do this, he must go away. So don't listen to it. Of course, Prabhupada did not write the whole thing here. If one is not expert enough to do this, means counter-argue, he should give up his life on the spot. But before that, there is another injunction. One should kill the blasphemer and then give up his life on the spot. So better just go away from there. Killing is, yes, scriptures say that, but law of the land does not allow this, so don't do this. While Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Banaras or Kashi, the Mayavadi sannyasis blasphemed him in many ways, because although he was a sannyasi, he was indulging in chanting and dancing. Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar heard this criticism, and it was intolerable for them because they were great devotees of Lord Chaitanya. They could not stop it, however, and therefore they appealed to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because this blasphemy was so intolerable that they had decided to give up their lives. So these Mayavadi sannyasis or Mayavadi followers, they were saying, wow, what kind of sannyasi is this? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he's always singing and dancing. And he's not even studying Vedanta Sutra, which is a main activity for Mayavadi sannyasis. So basically they were saying, oh, he's just an emotional, sentimental fool who doesn't know Vedanta Sutra. Tomara nindayat sannyasi ragan, shunitena pari fade hridaya shravan. The Mayavadi sannyasis are all criticizing your holiness. We cannot tolerate hearing such criticism. For this blasphemy breaks our hearts. This is a manifestation of real love for Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are three categories of Vaishnavas: Kanishth, Madhyam, and Uttam Adhikaris. The Kanishth Adhikari, or the devotee in the lowest stage of Vaishnava life, has firm faith but is not familiar with the conclusions of the Shastras. The devotee in the second stage, the Madhyam Adhikari, is completely aware of the Shastric conclusion and has firm faith in his Guru and the Lord. He therefore, avoiding non-devotees, preaches to the innocent. However, the Mahabhagavata, or Uttam Adhikari, the devotee in the highest stage of devotional life, does not see anyone as being against the Vaishnava principles, for he regards everyone as a Vaishnava, but himself. This is Mahabharata. He says everybody is a Vaishnava, everybody is a devotee except me. So he doesn't see any faults in anybody. This is the essence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions, that one be more tolerant than a tree and think oneself lower than the straw in the street. Trinadapi shanichena tarorapi saheshna. However, even if a devotee is in the Uttam Bhagavat status, he must come down to the second status of life, Madhyam Adhikari, to be a preacher. For a preacher should not tolerate blasphemy against another Vaishnava. So for preaching, he must come down. So come down doesn't mean he has to change some ashram or something. It's just in his thought process. He has to preach heavily. Although Prabhupada was Mahabhagavata, Uttam Adhikari, but he would call others fools and rascals. But this was for preaching purpose. Whereas Uttam Adhikari would not be able to preach. You would see everybody is more advanced than himself. But he had to preach. Although a Kanishth Adhikari also cannot tolerate such blasphemy, he is not competent to stop it by citing Shastric evidences. Therefore, Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar are understood to be Kanishth Adhikaris because they could not refute the arguments of the sannyasis in Banaras. They appealed to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take action, for they felt that they could not tolerate such criticism, although they also could not stop it. So even they were there with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu stayed in the house of Chandrasekhar. But still, they could not, as Prabhupada said, they are still counted as Kanishth Adhikaris. So not that everybody and anybody who comes in contact with the Supreme Lord himself becomes an Uttam Adhikari just like that. Or one understanding is they are just part of the Lila of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they were acting as Kanishth Adhikaris. Whatever the case may be, but they appeal to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that you please take action. इहा शुनि रहे प्रभु ईशत हासिया, सेई kale ek vipra milila hashiya. While Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar were thus talking with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he only smiled slightly and remained silent. At that time, a Brahmin came there to meet the Lord. Because the blasphemy was cast against Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he did not feel sorry, and therefore he was smiling. This is the ideal Vaishnava behavior. One should not become angry upon hearing criticism of himself. But if other Vaishnavas are criticized, one must be prepared to act as previously suggested. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very compassionate towards his pure devotees, Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar. Therefore, by his grace, this Brahman immediately came to him. By his omnipotency, the Lord created this situation for the happiness of his devotees. Asi nivedan kare charane dhariya, ek vastu mago deha prasanna haiya. The Brahman immediately fell at the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and requested him to accept his proposal in a joyful mood. The Vedic injunctions state Tad Vidhi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya. One must approach a superior authority in humbleness. One cannot challenge a superior authority, but with great submission, one can submit his proposal for acceptance by the spiritual master or spiritual authority. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an ideal teacher by his personal behavior, and so also are all his disciples. Thus, this Brahman, being purified in association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, followed these principles in submitting his request to the higher authority. He fell down at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then spoke as follows. Shakala sannyasi mui kainu nimantran, tumi yadi aise purna hai moram. My dear Lord, I have invited all the sannyasis of Benares to my home. My desires will be fulfilled if you also accept my invitation. So he invited all the sannyasis. So he said, everybody else have accepted, but if you also come, accept, then we great. So the point is, Mahaprabhu would go there and he would transform the heart of all these sannyasis. So this Brahman knew that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the only Vaishnava sannyasi in Benares at that time, and all the others were Mayavadis. It's a duty of a grihastha to sometimes invite sannyasis to take food at his home. This grihastha Brahman wanted to invite all the sannyasis to his house, but he also knew that it would be very difficult to induce Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to accept such an invitation because the Mayavadi sannyasis would be present. Therefore, he fell down at the Lord's feet and fervently appealed to him to be compassionate and grant his request. Thus, he humbly submitted his desire. Naya Shanyashi Goshi Hami Jani Mora Anugraha Karani Mantranamani. My dear Lord, I know that you never mix with other sannyasis, but please be merciful unto me and accept my invitation. An Acharya or great personality of the Vaishnava school is very strict in his principles, but although he is as hard as a thunderbolt, sometimes he is as soft as a rose. Thus, actually, he is independent. He follows all the rules and regulations strictly, but sometimes he slackens his policy. It was known that Lord Chaitanya never mixed with Mayavadi sannyasis, yet he conceded to the request of the Brahman as stated in the next verse. Prabhu hasi nimantrana kaila angika sannyasi re kripa lagi bhangitaha. Lord Chaitanya smiled and accepted the invitation of the Brahman. He made this gesture to show his mercy to the Mayavadi sannyasis. So Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar appealed to the lotus feet of the Lord regarding their grief at the criticism of him by the sannyasis in Banaras. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu merely smiled, yet he wanted to fulfill the desires of his devotees. And the opportunity came when the Brahman came to request him to accept his invitation to be present in the midst of the other sannyasis. This coincidence was made possible by the omnipotency of the Lord. Se Vipra Janin Prabhu Nayaya Karaghare Tahar Preranaya Tare Atyagraha Kare. The Brahman knew that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never went to anyone else's house, yet due to inspiration from the Lord, he earnestly requested him to accept this invitation. So Mahaprabhu, he himself was inspiring that Brahman from inside to request earnestly to Mahaprabhu to accept this invitation. Aradine Gela Prabhu Sevi Prabhavane Dekile Vasiya Chen Sanyasi Ragane. The next day, when Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the house of that Brahman, he saw all the sannyasis of Banaras sitting there. Sava namaskari gela pada prakshalan kari vasila se sthan. As soon as Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the sannyasis, he immediately offered obeisances. He's the Supreme Lord, but still he offered obeisances to all the sannyasis. And then he went to wash his feet. So after washing his feet, he sat down by the place where he had done so. So that place is considered very dirty, where you wash your feet and then you go inside. But he sat down at that place. Why did he do though? Let's see. By offering his obeisances to the Mayavadi sannyasis, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very clearly exhibited his humbleness to everyone. Vaishnavas must not be disrespectful to anyone, to say nothing of a sannyasi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches, Amanina Manade. One should always be respectful to others, but should not demand respect for himself. A sannyasi should always walk barefoot, and therefore, when he enters a temple or a society of devotees, he should first wash his feet and then sit down in a proper place. In India, it is still the prevalent custom that one put his shoes in a specified place and then enter the temple barefoot after washing his feet. And actually, this is a nice system I have seen at every Gurdwara. Outside, before you enter the Gurdwara, there's a step before the staircase, and there's a running water, and you step in that first, and then your feet are washed, and then you enter the Gurdwara. But somehow not every temple follows this. I don't know why. We should do that. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an ideal acharya, and those who follow in his footsteps should practice the methods of devotional life that he teaches us. Vasiya karila kichu aishwarya prakash, mahatejamoy vapu koti surya bhas. After sitting on the ground, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited his mystic power by manifesting an effulgence as brilliant as the illumination of millions of suns. So this is what he did. He sat down and then he manifested an effulgence from his body, and how powerful, as brilliant as the illumination of millions of suns. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as a Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, is full of all potencies. Therefore, it is not remarkable for him to manifest the illumination of millions of suns. Lord Shri Krishna is known as Yogeshwara, the master of all mystic things. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Lord Krishna himself, and therefore he can exhibit any mystic power. And this, especially the sannyasi, Prakashanand Saraswati. So, he was a Mayavadi sannyasi, and he was the leader of all the Mayavadi sannyasis there in Banaras at that time. Now, his name is Prakashanand. So he derives pleasure in Prakash, whether the Prakash is of Brahm Jyoti, Prakash of his so-called knowledge. And that's also, Mahaprabhu showed him, okay, you want to see Prakash? I'll show you Prakash. So he manifested this effulgence of millions of suns. Prabhave akarshila sab sannyasi man, utila sannyasi sab chadiya san. When the sannyasis saw the brilliant illumination of the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, their minds were attracted and they all immediately gave up their sitting places and stood in respect. So this is what Mahaprabhu did, and it really attracted the attention of everybody there. To draw the attention of common men, sometimes saintly persons, acharyas and teachers exhibit extraordinary opulences. This is necessary to attract the attention of fools. But a saintly person should not misuse such power for personal sense gratification, like false saints who declare themselves to be God. So sometimes they have siddhis, acharyas also have siddhis, but they don't use those siddhis or misuse those siddhis for personal enjoyment. But sometimes others do. Even a magician can exhibit extraordinary feats that are not understandable to common men. But this does not mean that the magician is God. It's a most sinful activity to attract attention by exhibiting mystic powers, and then to utilize this opportunity to declare oneself to be God. A real saintly person never declares himself to be God, but always places himself in the position of a servant of God. So this is a real saintly person. But it takes lots and lots of spiritual advancement to be this humble, actually. To understand I'm nothing but a servant of God. For a servant of God, there is no need to exhibit mystic powers, and he does not like to do so. But on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a humble servant of God performs his activities in such a wonderful way that no common man can dare try to act like him. Yet a saintly person never takes credit for such actions because he knows very well that when wonderful things are done on this behalf by the grace of the Supreme Lord, all credit goes to the master, not to the servant. But to remember this always, it's not easy. But once the mystic powers are there and you show some magic to common people start following you, giving you money, and lots of fan following is there. They're giving you all kinds of accolades. That, you are this, you are that. And that is when Maya captures that person. Prabhupada himself showed so many times different things. But first he never took credit, and then secondly he always made sure that everybody understood this is all Krishna's mercy. Prakashananda name sarva sannyasi pradhan Prabhu ke kahila kichu kariya samar. The leader of all the Mayavadi sannyasis present was named Prakashananda Saraswati. And after standing up, he addressed Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as follows with great respect. As Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed respect to all the Mayavadi sannyasis, similarly the leader of the Mayavadi sannyasis, Prakashananda, also showed his respects to the Lord. Iha Isha Shunaha Shripad, Apavitra Sthane Vaisha Kiva Avasa. Please come here, Your Holiness. Why do you sit in that unclean place? What has caused your lamentation? So here is a distinction between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prakashanand Saraswati. In the material world, everyone wants to introduce himself as very important and great. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced himself very humbly and meekly. The Mayavadis were sitting in an exalted position, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat in a place that was not even clean. Therefore, the Mayavadi sannyasis thought that he must have been aggrieved for some reason, and Prakashanand Saraswati inquired about the cause for his lamentation. But in the process, what happened was he performed devotion service. Agyat Sukriti, he performed devotion service. And that's when Mahaprabhu became very merciful on him. Prabhu kehe ami hina sampradaya, toma sabar sabhaye, vashitena juyaya. The Lord replied, I belong to a lower order of sannyasis, therefore I do not deserve to sit with you. The lower order, because Mahaprabhu took sannyas later on from Keshav Bharti, from Bharti Sampradaya. And Prakashanand Saraswati. Saraswati was better than Bharti in their own assessment. Mayavadi sannyasis are always very puffed up because of their knowledge of Sanskrit and because they belong to Shankar Sampradaya. They're always under the impression that unless one is a Brahman and a very good Sanskrit scholar, especially in grammar, one cannot accept the renounced order of life or become a preacher. Mayavadi sannyasis always misinterpret all the Shastras with the word jugglery and grammatical compositions. Yet, Shripad Shankaracharya himself condemned such jugglery of words. In the words, Prapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshasiti Dukrina Karane. Dukrin refers to suffixes and prefixes in Sanskrit grammar. Shankaracharya warned his disciples that if they concern themselves only with the principles of grammar, not worshipping Govinda, they were fools, and fools would never be saved. Nahi, nahi rakshati. But this is what they get very involved in, just Sanskrit. Yet in spite of Shripad, Shankaracharya's instructions, foolish Mayavadi sannyasis are always busy juggling words on the basis of strict Sanskrit grammar. Mayavadi sannyasis are very puffed up if they hold the elevated sannyas title Tirtha, Ashram or Saraswati. So these are the higher orders. Even among Mayavadis, those who belong to other sampradayas and hold other titles such as Van, Aranya or Bharati are considered to be lower grade sannyasis. So I don't know what's the whole lot of difference, but this is how it works. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas from the Bharati Sampradaya, and thus he considered himself a lower sannyasi than Prakashanand Saraswati. So he considered himself lower. Of course, the idea was to engage Prakashanand Saraswati in his service. This was Mahaprabhu's idea. To remain distinct from Vaishnava sannyasis, the sannyasis of the Mayavad Sampradaya always think themselves to be situated in a very much elevated spiritual order. But Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in order to teach them how to become humble and meek, accepted himself as belonging to a lower sampradaya of sannyasis. Thus, he wanted to point out clearly that a sannyasi is one who is advanced in spiritual knowledge. One who is advanced in spiritual knowledge should be accepted as occupying a better position than those who lack such knowledge. So real position is decided by who's advanced in spiritual knowledge, not by which sampradaya one has taken sannyasi. The Mayavadi Sampradaya sannyasis are generally known as Vedantis. As a Vedanta word in Manavali. Actually, however, Vedanti refers to a person who perfectly knows Krishna. So that is what Krishna says. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. The so-called Mayavadi Vedantis do not know who Krishna is. Therefore, the title of Vedanti or knower of Vedanta philosophy is simply a pretension. Mayavadi sannyasis always think of themselves as real sannyasis and consider sannyasis of the Vaishnava order to be brahmacharis. So by brahmachari, a brahmachari is supposed to engage in the service of a sannyasi and accept him as his guru. The Mayavadi sannyasis therefore declare themselves to be not only gurus but Jagat gurus, so the spiritual masters of the entire world. Although, of course, they cannot see the entire world. Sometimes they dress gorgeously and travel on the backs of elephants in processions, and thus they are always puffed up, accepting themselves as Jagat gurus. Srila Rupa Goswami, however, has explained that Jagat Guru properly refers to one who is the controller of his tongue, mind, words, belly, genitals, and anger. Then Prithvim Sashashat. Such a Jagat Guru is completely fit to make disciples all over the world. Due to false prestige, Mayavadi sannyasis who do not have these qualifications sometimes harass and blaspheme a Vaishnava sannyasi who humbly engages in the service of the Lord. So this this difference will always be there between Vaishnava sannyasi and a Mayavadi sannyasi. Apane prakashananda hate te dhariya vashaila sabha midhe samana kariya. Prakashanand Saraswati, however, caught Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally by the hand and seated him with great respect in the midst of the assembly. The respectful behavior of Prakashanand Saraswati towards Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very much to be appreciated. Such behavior is calculated to be Agyat Sukriti, or pious activities that one executes unknowingly. But it's not just pious activity, it's pious activity that leads one to bhakti, that leads one to get the mercy of Guru and Vaishnava or the Lord. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very tactfully gave Prakashanand Saraswati an opportunity to advance in Agyat Sukriti so that in the future he might actually become a Vaishnava sannyasi. So a preacher always tries to find ways how to transform the hearts of the audience or others. Puchila tomara naam Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Keshav Bharatira Shishya, Tate Tumi Dhanya. Prakashanand Saraswati then said, I understand that your name is Shri Krishna Chaitanya. You are a disciple of Shri Keshav Bharati and therefore you are glorious. Sampradayika sannyasi tumi rahe grame, ki karane ama sabar nakara darashane. You belong to our Shankar Sampradaya and live in our village, Varanasi. Why then do you not associate with us? Why is it that you even avoid seeing us? A Vaishnava sannyasi or Vaishnava in the second stage of advancement in spiritual knowledge can understand four principles, namely the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotees, the innocent, and the jealous. This is for Madhyamadikari. And he behaves differently with each. He tries to increase his love for Godhead, make friendship with devotees, and preach Krishna consciousness among the innocent. But he avoids the jealous who are envious of the Krishna consciousness movement. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself exemplified such behavior. This is why Prakashanand Saraswati inquired why he did not associate or even talk with them. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed by example that a preacher of the Krishna consciousness movement generally should not waste his time talking with Mayavadi sannyasis, but with that, when there are arguments on the basis of a Shastra, a Vaishnava must come forward to talk and defeat them in philosophy. So this is a general principle one follows. But one has to, it varies from situation to situation. According to Mayavadi sannyasis, only one who takes sannyas in the disciplic succession from Shankaracharya is a Vedic sannyasi. Sometimes it is challenged that the sannyasis who are preaching in the Krishna consciousness movement are not genuine because they do not belong to Brahmin families. For Mayavadis, do not offer sannyas to one who does not belong to a Brahmin family by birth. Even in Ramanuja Sampradaya, some restrictions are there who can take sannyas. It's not that everybody. Only Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they award sannyas to everybody. Unfortunately, however, they do not know that at present everyone is born a Shudra, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. It is to be understood that there are no Brahmins in this age, because those who claim to be Brahmins simply on the basis of birthright do not have the Brahminical qualifications. However, even if one is born in a non-Brahmin family, if he has the Brahminical qualifications, he should be accepted as a Brahmin, as confirmed by Srila Narad Muni and the great saint Sridhar Swami. This is also stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Both Narad and Sridhar Swami completely agree that one cannot be a Brahmin by birthright, but must possess the qualities of a Brahmin. Thus, in our Krishna consciousness movement, we never offer the sannyas order to a person whom we do not find to be qualified in terms of the prescribed Brahminical principles. Although it's a fact that unless one is a Brahmin, he cannot become a sannyasi. It's not a valid principle that an unqualified man who is born in a Brahmin family is a Brahmin, whereas a Brahminically qualified person born in a non-Brahmin family cannot be accepted. So it's not a valid principle. So one who is qualified, he should be accepted as a Brahmin. The Krishna consciousness movement strictly follows the injunctions of Srimad Bhagavatam, avoiding misleading heresy and manufactured conclusions. So this pastime will go on a little further. We'll take it up tomorrow. We'll stop here and see anybody has any questions or comments.
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी।
Hare Krishna.
प्रभु जी, जगत गुरु की डेफिनेशन मुझे आज पता चली है अभी। इससे पहले I used to read it here and there, वो जो बैनर्स लगे होते हैं ना, वो ये वाले गुरु जी आ रहे हैं, ही से जगत गुरु। मतलब उसका भी सोचना समझना ध्यान ही नहीं आता था कि अच्छा जगत गुरु क्या होता है। बट today since he is the controller of mind tongue, this is.
Yeah, Prabhupada also said one place that they all call themselves Jagat Guru, but he hasn't even stepped out of his village. And he calls himself Jagat Guru. And there are so many people.
So many, right?
Yeah, qualification has to be there.
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी।
Hare Krishna.
प्रभु जी, ये है क्वेश्चन मेरा कि जैसे ब्राह्मणिकल क्वालिटीज तो हैं अगर किसी के अंदर, लेकिन उसका जो मतलब अर्निंग का तरीका है वो कहीं पर जॉब करता हो, तो उसको हम क्या कंसीडर करेंगे?
तो ऑब्वियसली ब्राह्मण तो नहीं है भाई, स्ट्रिक्ट वैदिक स्टैंडर्ड्स के क्वालिटीज हैं पर अर्निंग का तरीका नहीं है, तो इट्स अ मिक्सचर ना। बट दैट्स व्हाई महाप्रभु है ना, कलो शूद्र संभव, एवरीबॉडी इज अ शूद्र इन कलियुग।
ओके,
everybody is in that respect.
Thank you,
That's right, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. All have a safe and wonderful. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.